change for two reasons. Firstly, the number of training places has been cut sharply in recent years. Secondly, a huge number of doctors are about to retire, meaning that soon every new doctor will be needed badly right here in Germany.
Thanks very much, Peter. Now, in Malaysia, bad weather has stopped the search for a missing British teenager. 17-year-old Ellie James from Cornwall disappeared 5 days ago during a climbing expedition with her family. She became separated from them when the weather deteriorated during a hike on Mount Kinabalu, one of Asia's highest mountains.
It's Southeast Asia's tallest mountain. It's also one of the easiest to climb, making Mount Kinabalu a favourite expedition for tourists. Ellie James and her family scaled the summit last Thursday, but the weather deteriorated rapidly on the way down. Amid thick mist, Ellie and one of her brothers got separated from the group. He was found a few hours later. He told rescuers that when they became lost, his sister went off for help. 5 days on, she still hasn't been found. The company which sold Ellie's family the holiday now has staff en route to assist them.
We're very concerned about the safety of the young girl. We are optimistic that there will be a positive outcome, and we're doing everything possible, working with the National Park headquarters, who have sent out search parties to look for her.
7 years ago, these soldiers on a British Army training exercise narrowly escaped death after spending more than 2 weeks lost deep in the mountainside of Kinabalu, the terrain steep and treacherous.
Well, this is the area where the girl's allegedly been lost.
Mick Lomas is an experienced climber who's made 4 expeditions to Kinabalu.
If you stick with the guides and follow the tourist route, don't deviate from the path, then it's very safe. Deviate from the path in mist and it's very dangerous.
Ellie James's cousin has called her a tough little cookie, but the search for her is becoming increasingly desperate. Emma Simpson, BBC News.
Farmers and livestock traders have welcomed the first cattle auction to take place in Britain since the foot-and-mouth crisis started. It's 6 months since the epidemic began, and today, under strict controls, some 400 cattle were sold at auction at Kirkwall on Orkney. Our environment correspondent Richard Bilton is there. Richard, what was the atmosphere like today?
Well, Hugh, the importance of today's occasion wasn't lost on the farmers and traders who gathered here on Orkney. In fact, many of those traders are now on the harbour behind me waiting for the ferry to take back their newly acquired stock to the mainland. But today, really, this morning certainly, was about back to work. That was the feeling in the main hall. There were exhaustive checks to keep the disease at bay. The farmers all had to wear these plastic protective cloaks, the disinfectant. That was the smell throughout the whole hall. But it was a successful morning, as you say. More than 300 cattle were sold, and the prices really were pretty good. So that really is a glimmer of hope, if you like, for an industry that's had an absolutely nightmare 6 months. Let's remind ourselves what foot and mouth has meant. In the last 6 months, there have been 1,960 cases of foot and mouth. Nearly 4 million animals have been slaughtered. And apart from what went on here today, there have been no livestock markets on the mainland since February the 23rd. So if you live in Cumbria or North Yorkshire, where cases are continuing to emerge, normality still seems a long way away. Catherine Marston is at a market in Skipton. Catherine.
Thanks, Richard. Well, Skipton Auction Mart is normally bustling on a Monday afternoon. It's the busiest day of the week, with something like 2,000 sheep, 700 cattle passing through the stalls. But just have a look, there's absolutely nothing. It's deserted. There hasn't been a sale here since February the 19th. Well, many farmers say that this situation has been going on so long they're facing bankruptcy, and many others aren't sure how much longer they can go on.
Who do we want to vaccinate? Mr. Blair!
They've had enough. These farmers want a full public inquiry into the government's handling of foot and mouth, and their protest headed to London today. They came from all over Britain, each with their own story of what the disease has done to their lives. This isn't the sort of place you'd expect to find a farmer, but each day Robin Head leaves his farm in Devon to work as a plasterer. He's lived and worked on his farm for 20 years. Because of foot and mouth, it's simply not making him enough money.
We need to get some money together to pay for feed for the winter, and we've lost that reserve because of the costs we've incurred so far this year. And we haven't had the B&B backup, which we would normally have, so it's fairly serious.
George Lockett's Welsh farm is organic and there's been no foot and mouth here, but it's still in crisis. The restrictions on moving livestock have stopped George from selling any of his animals. The farm is now up for sale and he won't be left with a penny.
Because of the foot and mouth, there is an export ban now in place, which means that the traditional market for the Welsh hill lambs is now no longer open.
George's story isn't unique. Many more farmers are coping with the devastating effects of this disease. They won't settle for anything less than a public inquiry.
Well, the problem for farmers is that they can't sell their animals, they can't move their livestock, and they can't even get feed to the sheep that have been left up on the hilltops. Sheep that by now would have been brought to the lowlands and either sold for slaughter or used for breeding or fattened up. In fact, here tomorrow at Skipton Auction Mart should have been the annual sale of all the sheep from miles around that would have been sold for breeding purposes. That sale, of course, has had to be cancelled. The typical farming cycle has been badly affected, and farmers here are warning that we'll feel the consequences of that well into next year. Hugh.
Catherine, thank you very much. In Florida, 6 people have been attacked by sharks while swimming off a popular beach. Surfers said they were surrounded by the sharks, which are thought to have been drawn to the area because of a large number of fish. Near Daytona Beach, a 17-year-old girl was taken to hospital after she was attacked. Now, the average price of a pint of lager, nothing fancy, just ordinary lager, has reached £2 for the first time. No surprise, according to the latest industry survey, that London charges most, while Scotland, Wales and the northwest of England charge least. The difference can be as much as 50p a pint. And that's all to do with property prices and wages, according to the brewers. So we sent Robert Nisbet to find out for himself.
Beer money's no longer pint-sized. The survey of over 1,000 pubs by the trade newspaper The Publican suggests the north-south divide is closing, at least behind bars, with the price of lager larger than ever.
In London and southeast England, the price of a pint of lager bubbled over the £2 mark 2 years ago. It now averages £2.14. Whereas here in Bristol, the pint glass of lager has broken the £2 barrier for the very first time. Well, up the M5 in Birmingham, it's just below the glass ceiling at £1.97. It's even cheaper in Scotland, Wales and the north of England at £1.91.
For these drinkers in the Midlands, the price rise camber for the amber nectar leaves a nasty taste in the mouth.
I think it's scandalous, the way it fluctuates from one pub to another.
Personally, as a drinker and a publican, yes, it's far too expensive, but the overheads of the pub dictate the price that people have to pay. Simple as that.
And the brewers second that. It's not just the lager you're swallowing, but the pub's running costs as well. And those are more expensive in the south.
Well, the reason why lager costs different price across the country is very straightforward. The costs of doing business across the country are different. So it's the cost of actually buying property, running a property, and employing staff. Those are all different in different places, and that is reflected in the price of the beer.
And the industry argues that measure for measure, British draft lager is still among the cheapest in Europe, with the French paying £2.51 for a pint and the Swedes a heavy £4.38. The cost of a British jar, it claims, is relatively small beer. Robert Nisbet, BBC News.
Now, before we take a look at the weather, we have something rather special to show you. Every year, mysterious circles appear in fields of crops. No one knows how or why, but this one in Wiltshire is something else. Take a look, 400 perfect circles in a massive design, 1,500 feet across. Lots of theories, mini whirlwinds, say some, energetic pranksters, they'd have to be pretty energetic to do that, or even alien forces. The choice, as they say, is yours. I say aliens, but I bet you any money that Sarah says whirlwinds.
No, I think I'll go with aliens too, actually. Amazing, absolutely amazing features. As for the weather, well, it looks like it's going to be dry through tonight and tomorrow for many eastern areas, but there's some very wet and windy weather on the way into more western parts. Now, a few showers about across northern Scotland for this evening, but generally it's going to be a dry evening, but we're looking out towards the west at the next batch of cloud and rain. Now, that's going to drift eastwards through tonight, the first drops of rain getting into western Scotland later on, then some very heavy rain drifting across eastern areas during the day tomorrow. That'll fizzle out as it continues its progress across the United Kingdom during tomorrow night. Now, not only is it going to turn very wet, but also windy. Gales in parts of western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Gusts of wind in exposed areas perhaps as high as 50 or 55 miles per hour. But tonight, most places will be dry, temperatures dropping to 9 or 10 degrees. And many of us will start the day tomorrow dry with plenty of sunshine. But already there'll be that rain across some western parts of Scotland, some very wet weather drifting across western and central Scotland, Northern Ireland, some showery rain getting in towards southwest England. But for the east, it'll stay dry and warm. It will feel quite chilly, though, in the northwest. More in the next half an hour. Hugh.
Sarah, thanks very much. Main story for you once again. Concorde could be back in full business within a few weeks. It comes after all the modifications made to the planes following last year's Paris air disaster. We'll bring you the latest just before 7. Now it's time to join the BBC's news teams throughout the United Kingdom. Bye for now.
Good evening and welcome to Reporting Scotland.
On the programme tonight, back to normal. Orkney hosts the first live cattle market since the start of the foot and mouth crisis.
A man appears in court charged with the murder of an asylum seeker in Glasgow.
A 30-year blot on the Highland landscape, but this road to nowhere will soon be no more.
And Rangers fly out to Turkey for a tough Champions League assignment.
So, the first live cattle auction in the country since the start of the foot and mouth crisis has taken place in Orkney. Farmers have described the sale as a vital step on the road to recovery for the industry. Nearly 400 cattle went under the hammer. Despite the strict hygiene controls in place to prevent any further outbreak of the disease, the sale has been hailed as a great success. Let's cross now to our reporter John Johnson. John.
Well, a very good evening, David, from Orkney. And I have to say that the weather here tonight certainly matches the mood here in the community. Very buoyant. There's a relief too that Orkney has led the way, and it's been quite a momentous day. Behind me over here, the first cattle will be shipped out later tonight to farms on the Scottish mainland.
The first steps to recovery. Cattle arriving early this morning to pens that have lain empty for the last 6 months. Over 300 miles from the nearest case of foot and mouth, farmers in Orkney have fought a long and hard campaign for sales to begin. Their dreams were at last realised.
First live auction sale in the country today. I hope the restrictions haven't been too much inconvenience for you, but at least we're getting going.
Prices were good, with some animals reaching over £700.
I think it's tremendous for Orkney, and it's a great time for us, and it's good publicity for us to see the quality of cattle that we produce up here.
The agricultural industry know the road to recovery will be tough. For farmers like George Wiley, getting the sales up and running again has meant a much-needed cash injection for the family business.
It's been quite difficult. Obviously, we always need to bring in money, and I myself have had to sell some cattle privately to keep the cash flow in some sort of normal fashion, but this sale allows us to start trading and marketing our cattle in a more orderly way.
With the first sale now over, many are hoping it'll mark a return to some sort of normality for Scotland's farming community.
We've missed the shows, which is our market, was our shop window then, and this is our first shop window, and Orkney's been lucky to get their one open today.
Now everybody in the industry hopes Europe will recognise their efforts and reopen vital export markets.
The government in Westminster, particularly the Prime Minister, said he would stand shoulder to shoulder with industry. We've played our part. We're now playing our part as livestock markets open up again. So let's see you deliver on the commitments that you promised us back in May and get the export markets open.
Livestock sales under equally strict conditions will resume on the Scottish mainland early next month.
Tonight in Orkney, there's a great sense of relief as farmers and buyers make their way home. Also here in the community, there's a feeling too that it's been a momentous day, and also in the community that the people have got back to normal. The baton has been handed, the mart has worked well here, it's now been handed across to farms and to the marts on the Scottish mainland. From a very sunny Kirkwall, it's back over the Pentland Firth to Glasgow.
John, thank you.
A 26-year-old man has appeared in court charged with the murder of the Kurdish asylum seeker Firsat Dag. Mr Dag's death earlier this month caused a heightening of tensions in the Sighthill area of Glasgow, where he was killed. Alan Mackay reports.
The 22-year-old asylum seeker died in the early hours of August the 5th after being stabbed as he walked home to the controversial Sighthill scheme. Though police did not overplay the possibility of a racist killing, Firsat Dag's death and a subsequent knife attack nearby on a young Iranian refugee sparked demonstration and counter-demonstration over the circumstances of asylum seekers in the city. The man accused of the murder was at Glasgow Sheriff Court today, along with a second man who faces separate charges of attempting to murder a German tourist in Glasgow city centre shortly after the asylum seeker's death. The court appearances come after 2 weeks of intensive police investigation following the death of Firsat Dag. Over 200 people were interviewed at addresses both in Sighthill and elsewhere in Glasgow. 26-year-old Scott Burrell, whose address was given as Petershill Court, is accused of murdering Firsat Dag and the assault and robbery of a German tourist on the same night in Glasgow city centre. 25-year-old Martin Gould is facing charges in connection with the assault and robbery of the German tourist. Both men made no plea or declaration and were remanded in custody. Tonight, confirming the charges against murder-accused Scott Burrell, the Crown Office said he was also accused of a separate assault earlier this year. Alan Mackay reporting, Scotland, Glasgow.
Coming up later on tonight's programme, the First Minister's warning to Scotland's public sector workers. The consumer comes first, not you.
And fancy chipping in for a piece of golfing history? The starters box at the Old Course is up for sale.
And Alison's here with tonight's sporting headlines.
Thanks, Sally. Well, Rangers confirmed they're after Scotland international Don Hutchison. Focus, though, for the moment is on Fenerbahce. Rangers left for Turkey this morning with 1 or 2 surprise inclusions. And misery for Monty as he's disqualified from the final major of the season. Sports details a little later.
The First Minister, as I was saying, has told Scotland's public service workers that the consumer comes first. Henry McLeish says the public sector has to modernise, adapt and, crucially, put the needs of the people first. But union leaders fear that backdoor privatisation is on the way and warned him to think again. Mr McLeish spelled out his thinking at a speech at Glasgow University. Our political editor, Brian Taylor, is there. Brian.
Thanks very much, Sally. Well, Henry McLeish may have chosen this ancient, cloistered setting for his keynote speech, but the message he came here to deliver on public services was relentlessly modern. It's healthcare Scotland, but not as we've known it. The privately built Hare Myers Hospital in East Kilbride, praised today by the First Minister as a prime, modern public service. Henry McLeish may dissent from Tony Blair over the full private provision of such services, but that doesn't make him an old-style socialist.
We believe that what matters is what works. And by that I mean that in any conflict between pragmatism and ideology, pragmatism will always prevail. We also believe that the interests of consumers should be put before those of producers. Even the best of the traditional public services could lose sight of their main goal, to serve the public, and often did.
That means more public-private partnerships to provide hospitals and schools. It means defending private contracts for trunk road maintenance. It may mean more private prisons, especially if the executive has to speed up the end of slopping out. But unions say Hare Myers and other public-private projects mean problems and long-term costs.
If the indication from today's speech is that we're going down a route of greater private sector involvement, then yes, we are saying to them, think again on that, and we'll be saying that very loudly. Unison is operating a campaign just now on the theme of positively public, and we believe that there is a strong case to be made for a strong public sector, strong public services, and the private involvement is no way of delivering those services.
But Henry McLeish is content for the voting public to judge him by delivery.
Tell me, Brian, all this talk of pragmatism, is this Henry McLeish edging towards a more Blairite agenda on private provision?
I think it can be interpreted that way, but I don't think that would be an accurate or reasonable interpretation. Henry McLeish is not going down the precise road that Tony Blair talked about, which was not just private funding, but private provision of services. What he is doing, if you like, is giving a warning to the public sector that despite the fact that he isn't adopting that Blairite agenda in its London guise, he is looking to the public sector to improve the services and improve the service to the public in particular.
Brian, why now, 2 years into the Parliament, are we getting this grand statement of principles? What's behind it?
Well, of course, Henry McLeish took over in circumstances that no one would have wished, taking over from Donald Dewar. So he's setting out, if you like, the philosophy that underpins his executive. But I think there's a practical issue here as well. The bulk of the principles he included in his speech today were, frankly, platitudinous. But what he is doing is saying that when subsequent difficult decisions are to be taken by the Cabinet, they are underpinned by those issues that are taken today. So if someone wants to dissent later on perhaps, for example, the use of private prisons or other issues affecting transport or issues affecting education, Henry McLeish will be able to point with legitimacy to today's speech and say, no, you back those principles in the issue that I was addressing today.
Brian Taylor, thank you.
A road bulldozed through the Cairngorms in the 1960s as part of a failed ski development is to be landscaped and the land returned to wilderness. The road, an ugly blot on the Highland scenery for more than 3 decades, is to be painstakingly restored by the National Trust for Scotland. And as our environment correspondent, Louise Batchelor, now reports, it's probably the highest landscaping project in the UK.
Britain's largest high mountain area. It's hard to see how humans could dent it, but we've done our best. The Caledonian pine forests largely disappeared, and in the early 60s, previous owners of Mar Lodge, encouraged by a particularly snowy winter, bulldozed a road to pave the way for a ski development. It never happened, but the scar remained, visible for miles around and destroying any sense of wilderness. The National Trust for Scotland, who took over 6 years ago, made restoration a priority.
The Cairngorms is important because it's the largest area, over 3,000 feet in Britain, and it's 4 of the 5 highest mountains. And the last thing you want is a track running up to about 3,600 feet up a mountain.
The mountain is Benavert, and so many thousands of feet up, this is landscape gardening not for the faint-hearted. Shovel loads of rock, soil and heathers being recovered from the mountainside where they were pushed 40 years ago. The only way the heather will grow again is by transferring it in big lumps. It's not elegant, but apparently it works, though one passenger on the crew looked decidedly doubtful. And the NTS admits getting the plants to grow again is the hardest part.
Certainly high up, we've had to use very different techniques to the ones we're using here. We've had a team of 4 or 5 guys literally picking up each small plant and replacing it a couple of foot to the right. Here it's heather and it doesn't like being moved very much, so we're using the biggest shovel we can get, this one basically, and that works well here.
And already the zigzag tracks blending in. The soil on the top's so thin it'll take years for all the plants to grow back. But for the NTS, it's £120,000 well spent on a mountain makeover, which miraculously hasn't blown back over the edge.
Experts will argue interminably as to whether there's any true wilderness left in Scotland, but the work going on up here at the moment should ensure that we get as close to it as possible. Louise Batchelor reporting Scotland in the Cairngorms.
A 63-year-old man has appeared in court to Dumfries charged with the murder of a woman whose body was found in the boot of a car. Stuart Allen is accused of suffocating 57-year-old Ella Thompson at his or her home in the town. No plea was made and the case was continued.
Tayside police say they're now satisfied that there are no suspicious circumstances surrounding the fire in Barry yesterday, in which a father and his 2 young sons were killed. 29-year-old Mohammed Jules died in the blaze along with 6-year-old Isiaka and 4-year-old Zili. Mr. Jules' wife, mother-in-law and daughter all managed to escape.
A 70-year-old man has gone on trial at the High Court in Glasgow, charged with rape and sexual assault during the time he worked at the Quarriers Village Children's Home in the 1960s. Samuel McBrearty denies a total of 17 offences which are alleged to have been committed when he was house father in the home. The trial is expected to last at least a week.
Parents in the Borders are campaigning to stop cuts in the education budget caused by a council overspend of nearly £4 million. They claim the cuts will affect provision for children with special needs. Our education reporter Martha Fairley has more details.
That's for sure.
5-year-old Rosie Cole in Jedburgh is autistic. She has problems communicating and playing with other children. But since last year, she's made great progress.
Rosie has just finished her first year in primary school.
in mainstream with auxiliary help, and she has just done immensely well, and I really do not want to see that jeopardised.
Education savings in the Borders mean cuts to auxiliary support for children like Rosie. Today, parents launched a petition against the cost-cutting measures. Borders Council says the cuts are a financial necessity, but parents claim the measures amount to discrimination. They say services like classroom auxiliaries are vital to the education of special needs children. So far, £1.5 million of savings have been made, but that's only to keep the council on budget this year. Parents fear more cuts are planned to claw back the council's debts.
I'm extremely worried about what's going on. The cuts have gone through, but there are many more probably to come. We're probably talking 2 or 3 years, we understand. So we really want to know how this whole thing is going to be sorted out long term.
But the immediate effects are already being felt. This summer, Eyemouth High School hasn't had its yearly deep clean, and £35,000 has been cut from the school budget.
Effects on our school are particularly here in the art department, where £20,000 of alterations have had to go, and in maintenance, redecoration, which we simply can't do, for example, in our corridors.
The council says the cuts are unpalatable but necessary.
And the council's been clear, I think, from the outset that they would not wish to do anything detrimental to the well-being of any child in relation to these adjustments. It is about trying to be efficient in the use of the resources that we've got.
Several inquiries are already underway into how the Education Department ran up its debts. Today's petition calls for the Scottish Parliament to intervene to ensure that children like Rosie don't lose out as a result. Martha Fairley, reporting Scotland.
In Glasgow, meanwhile, hundreds of pupils at one secondary school were sent home after just a few hours of the first day of term because a controversial refurbishment of the school hadn't been completed. The council had promised that all city schools would be ready for the new term. Shawlands Academy on the city's south side is one of 29 secondaries being upgraded as part of a massive private finance initiative. Eleanor Bradford reports.
The first day of term at Shawlands Academy, and they didn't get further than assembly. Despite council assurances that work would be completed on time, staff decided it was impossible to teach and sent pupils home.
We've just started back and we don't know what classes we're in and
we
stuff
don't know
like
where
that.
to go and stuff.
We're not getting our diaries to next week.
Are you angry about it or?
Yeah.
Shawlands Academy is one of 29 schools being upgraded or rebuilt across Glasgow. Under the biggest private finance initiative of its kind in Britain, money from 2 construction companies and the Halifax has allowed refurbishment on an unprecedented scale. Pupils at Clevedon Secondary School have been able to enjoy their new surroundings, but others haven't. On Friday, the council admitted work at 5 schools hadn't been completed. Shawlands, though, wasn't one of those.
At the present moment, in the Glasgow's overall project, there are 26 ongoing building projects. They're all on time. They're all on time. Some of them, in fact, are ahead of time. What we're seeing here is the fact that the building work did take place right up and maximised the school holiday period. The staff think need a few hours extra to get things properly done. OK, we have to live with that.
The teaching union, the EIS, supported what it called the good sense of staff. It also warned that Shawlands isn't alone and teaching could be disrupted at more schools during the week. A number of parents and teachers have privately expressed their anger to me over today's events. Although by the end of the week they will have new classrooms, this is another knock to the already fragile reputation of private finance initiatives. Eleanor Bradford, reporting Scotland, outside Shawlands Academy.
The Scottish-based charity is at the centre of efforts to help resettle white farmers fleeing the troubles in Zimbabwe. Squatters and militiamen supporting the increasingly violent regime of Robert Mugabe want the land to be taken away from the farmers and returned to them. Some of the whites have been killed, some have left to start a new life away, many others are likely to follow. Willie Johnson reports.
Growing sunflowers near Stranraer wasn't quite the future mapped out for Derek Arlett Johnson. Last year he was farming 3,500 acres in central Zimbabwe with a staff of 65. But with white farmers like him increasingly the target of verbal and actual assaults by militiamen demanding ownership of the land, he decided he had no alternative but to flee for his life.
We already had farmers killed, and I'd received reliable information that I was on a hit list of Mugabe's, and that people were coming to kill me. Following 2 visits to my property, I decided it was not safe and that the threats were genuine, and I decided to get out of Zimbabwe at that stage.
Derek left all his assets and arrived in the UK with only £600 in cash. He did various labouring jobs to survive. Now, with the help of a charitable organisation run from a Galloway estate, he's establishing a new life in southwest Scotland.
The Trust helps quite simply by finding accommodation for families as soon as they arrive in the country. It also helps by giving them money, remembering that there isn't any foreign exchange in Zimbabwe left to speak of, so they arrive with minimal amount of cash. But the important thing then is to get a roof over the family's heads, give a certain amount of stability so that the head of the family can go out and look for work.
So far, the Trust has helped about 15 white Zimbabwean farmers resettle in various parts of the UK. The numbers coming out are still a trickle, but should that trickle become a flood, the Trust would no longer be able to cope, and warns that wider UK government intervention would then be required. Willie Johnston, reporting Scotland, Wigtonshire.
Sport now. Alison's back.
Thanks again, Sally. Rangers are after Scotland international Don Hutchison. Ibrox chairman David Murray has confirmed that he has made an inquiry about the unsettled Sunderland midfielder. Meanwhile, Rangers set off for Turkey today and the deciding leg of their Champions League qualifier against Fenerbahce, and the party included some unexpected faces.
Facing one of his biggest weeks since coming to Rangers, Dick Advocaat wouldn't comment on the prospect of Don Hutchison coming to Ibrox, but contact has been made with Sunderland regarding the Scotland international. Nothing will be finalised until after the Champions League qualifier. No Hutchison yet then, but there were some surprise inclusions in the Rangers squad, which did gather at Glasgow Airport. Claudio Caniggia, Billy Dodds, Kenny Miller and Maurice Ross all travelling. Rangers' injury situation has improved, giving Advocaat more options for the game on Wednesday night.
It's easier for the manager to put a team on the field without having to kind of put a patched up team together and put guys in different positions. So now at least he can put players in their correct positions, and and there's really no more excuses now about injuries.
The players know this game stands between them and the Champions League, and they don't plan on letting that chance slip away.
We know we got a difficult task to do there, and but it's also for them. I think if you see it in percentage, they only have a win is good for them. For us, the scoring draws enough and a win, so we are on the better side, I guess.
Only 300 Rangers fans are making the trip to Istanbul, and security will be tight at the Fenerbahce Stadium.
Our anxieties, it's not so long ago since 2 football fans were murdered in Istanbul, and we're going to a lot of bother to make sure our fans know the things which the Turkish community are sensitive to, and we've pointed these out to our fans, and hopefully everything will be all right on this occasion.
Celtic hope Johan Mjällby will be fit for the second leg of their Champions League qualifier against Ajax, despite the fact that he limped off during their match at Livingston at the weekend. Celtic are still top of the SPL, even though they were held to a 0-0 draw at Almond Vale. Rangers missed their chance to leapfrog the champions with a 2-2 draw against Hibs. Elsewhere, Aberdeen registered their first win of the season, while St Johnstone are pointless and bottom after defeat number 4. Jane Hoffin reports.
There were fears that Celtic would lose their influential defender for the second leg with Ajax when Mjällby paid the price for his clash with David Fernandes. But the Swedish international says his ankle is improving and he should be there to help defend their 3-1 lead. Livingston have provided a sterner test than the Dutch so far. Celtic's only shot on target came from the penalty spot, and that produced a rare Henrik Larsson miss. Livy are living the dream.
Head for the skies, head for the stars, If you drop short, you fall in the clouds. So, that's our ambition, head for the highest. If we don't make it, we drop in between, and that's it.
Rangers' European build-up also came down to earth with another no-win game at Ibrox. A goal from their young star Stephen Hughes wickedly deflected, and another from Flo couldn't secure them the top spot in the SPL. Hibs claimed their share of the spoils with a fine Alan Orman equaliser. Substitute Francisco Luna only just failed to send Rangers into orbit. This time last year, Dundee United hadn't won a match. This season, they haven't lost one. Jim McIntyre opened their account against Dunfermline, and Derek Lilly had them 2 up after half an hour, while Pars captain Scott Thompson gave the visitors a lifeline with a penalty in this free kick. Jim Hamilton made no mistake from the spot to keep Alex Smith's men on the Old Firm's heels. Motherwell looked like they might prevent Aberdeen's first win of the season.
Former Don Andy Dow and David Kelly combined to put the visitors 2-1 up at one stage, but the second half was all Aberdeen's. Teenager Darren Mackey put Aberdeen ahead on 54 minutes, and substitute Hitcham Zerouali compounded a miserable trip for Motherwell, who could now be without key players Greg Strong and Kevin Twaddle for a month. Hearts went from the negative against Celtic to the positive against Dundee. Colin Cameron finishing off a clever free kick in the 12th minute for his second goal of the season, and Gary Wales added 2 more before Dundee's new Argentina-style away strip had even seen 15 minutes of action, while Kilmarnock beat St Johnstone 2-1, courtesy of Mikael Pizzo's first goal for the club. It was Killy's first win of the season.
Golf and Colin Montgomerie rounded off a miserable year in the majors with a disqualification in the US PGA. Montgomerie's playing partner Andy Olcorn marked his scorecard incorrectly, penciling in his score as 71 when it was in fact a 72. Monty failed to spot the error, signed the card and so was disqualified. A costly mistake, £6,000 worth of prize money. I dare say he can afford it. That's the sport.
So look at a few others. Presidents Bush and Clinton, Sean Connery, Michael Douglas, Catherine Zeta-Jones, they've all got a bit of a passion for golf too. And now, if they fancy it, they can buy a bit of golfing history, because the Starters Hut at St Andrews, which has announced them all onto the course in its time, is up for sale. Only thing is, if one of them buys it, they'll have to take it away brick by brick. Alan Grant.
The Royal and Ancient building is the one most usually associated with the home of golf, but the less imposing structure of the starters box is equally important when it comes to teeing off on the famous Old Course. Now, however, it has to make way for an improved practice area and can't be moved as it wouldn't meet modern building regulations. For almost 80 years it's been the point golfers have looked to begin their game.
12:30 game, play away now, please folks.
Now it's to be sold off, but the lucky new owner will have to come and get it.
Our architect thinks it might be possible to actually lift the building up in its entirety, which would be rather nice. The alternative to that would be to take the roof off and keep that in its entirety, and then take the walls down and reconstruct it wherever it's going. But whoever does it will have to pay those costs, obviously.
The Trust have no idea how much they're likely to raise, but they'll regard the sum as a windfall and put it into their junior golf development programme. Anyone interested in buying the building can do so through the Trust's website. Believe it or not, the first of what's hoped will be many bids was in by lunchtime today. Whoever's eventually successful won't only get the building, they'll get all the fittings as well, including the tannoy system. Alan Grant, reporting Scotland, St Andrews.
He's been wanting to do that all his life. I saw an elusive thing the other day. In fact, today, it was the sun. Gail, we're going to get some more.
From this evening, no, we're not actually. It's going to get worse, but you can't complain. Saturday was nice, although Sunday was a little bit dismal. But a very good evening to you. Yes, David was right. We did see some sunshine here in Inverness-shire, just overlooking Loch Ness. It's actually looking glorious, some good sunshine breaking through, and certainly quite a contrast to the rather dull and damp conditions we saw here yesterday. But if we take a look at the eyes of our chart, we can see low pressure looming. That's what's going to whistle in overnight tonight, bringing with it some rather strong winds. These are gradually going to filter in towards Ireland at first, and then I should think probably the western side of the country, more exposed areas, will probably see strong to maybe even gale force winds as we move through into tomorrow. Now, it's not just the winds we're going to have to contend with, but also this band of rain. It's gradually going to filter eastwards as well, and we should probably see it just reach in towards the Western Isles and western parts of Ireland later on tonight. But elsewhere, it's going to be largely dry and clear, and that'll probably allow temperatures to dip down to about 10 or maybe 11 degrees Celsius. But for Scotland this evening, we've got a bit of a showery end to the day, 1 or 2 showers, though they gradually will fizzle out and head up towards the Shetland Isles, and then many areas will have a dry end to the day. But overnight, there are going to be a few clear spells developing, and that means there's probably going to be 1 or 2 mist patches, especially down towards Dumfries and Galloway. But out towards the west, that's where we're going to see the first splashes of rain, probably in towards the Stornoway area and then Skye later on. So temperature-wise tonight, we're probably going to get no lower than 8 or 9 degrees Celsius, but the main feature tonight is of course going to be those strong to gale force winds, especially over the more exposed hills and coasts. Then for tomorrow morning, well, we should start the day dry and bright, especially towards the east of the region, but out towards the west, that rain is still going to linger here, and gradually it will filter inland as we move through into the afternoon. So as you'd think, for the Northwest Highlands, here we're going to see some rather heavy and persistent downpours, especially over the Western Isles, coming down through Poolew, Skye and the Arisaig area. And that's also going to be the same as we sink further south, especially over the Argyll Coast and Islands, down towards Ayrshire and Dumfries and Galloway as well. So temperature-wise tomorrow, despite the rain, it's not going to be too bad, 17 to 22 degrees Celsius, but we're going to hang on to those rather strong winds. So on the whole tomorrow, I should think away from the west coast, it's going to be largely dry and clear with perhaps 1 or 2 good sunny spells and temperatures getting up to 24 degrees Celsius. Then come Wednesday, it's not looking too bad actually, with just a system looming out to the west. But then on Thursday, we should probably see that front just nip in a little bit closer, and we should maybe have a few patchy downpours of rain into the northwest corner. But just a reminder on how things are shaping up tomorrow, I think the east coast is probably going to see the best of the weather, some dry spells here and bright spells, but out to the west, it's cloud and rain. That's the forecast.
Thanks very much, Gail. Now for another look at tonight's top stories. The British and French authorities have said that Concorde is likely to be issued with a safety certificate by the end of the month. That could mean commercial passenger flights resuming as early as next month. The world's only supersonic passenger jet has been grounded since last August after a crash near Paris in which 113 people died.
The country's first live cattle auction since the first case of foot and mouth was reported has taken place in Orkney. The sale has been described as a vital step on the road to recovery for the industry. Nearly 400 cattle went under the hammer.
And a 26-year-old man has appeared in court charged with the murder of the Kurdish asylum seeker Firstat Dag in Glasgow's Sighthill area. Scott Burrow from the Balornock area of the city made no plea and was remanded in custody. Mr. Dag's death was followed by several days of heightened tensions between locals and refugees in Sighthill.
That's all for now. I'll be back at 10:25 after 10 o'clock news with an update. Until then, have a very good evening.
Good evening.